Hey guys, it's me, it's Queen Auset-Heru, and thank you for joining me for episode 2 of The Witch Trials. The Witch Trials is my new video series where I put books, movies, songs, any form of multimedia on trial to see if the witchcraft involved is anywhere near accurate. Most of the books and movies and things that you see are 100% fiction. So it is my intention to point out to people what's real paganism and what's not. So today we're going to put Beautiful Creatures on trial. It is a movie that came out in 2013 and it is based on a novel. So, the first thing I'm going to do is give you a summary. After the summary, I give you the vices and then the virtues of what happened in the movie. The vices are the things that are completely ridiculous and probably could never happen. The virtues are the things that actually do happen and are pretty accurate to what actually goes on in paganism. Now, the summary. You have a small town. It's a small town in the South, and you have two teenagers. And these two teenagers, one is not from town, and one has lived in town his whole life. And the one that's not from town is actually from a family of casters. Casters is their term for witches. So basically, what happens is the two of them fall in love with each other, and they find out, well, she already knows, but he finds out that when she turns 16, she's either going to be claimed for the dark or for the light. So during this time, they have like 75 days. And so during this time, you get to see her eccentric family and their adventure that ensues. Okay? So that's the story. Now, let's talk about the cool part. Let's talk about the vices. Now, the first vice that I'm going to tell you about is the eccentric style of dress of the witches. All of the witches dressed very eccentrically. Long skirts and strange hats and purple hair and things like that. Uncle Macon, who was the main character's Uncle Macon wore very elaborate outfits, and they all looked very nice. But in paganism, some of us do dress like this, but not everybody. I was surprised that not one person, I guess maybe her cousin, she had a male cousin, and he did have on like a basic suit. So I guess he would be like the only one. But everybody seemed to have on this very flamboyant, eccentric way of dress that is common at Halloween when you see witch people in witch costumes. And most witches, we pretty much don't have a dress code. We dress however we want to. So some of us do. I have outfits like those. I wear long things, or my I have a cloak with a hood on it. Some of us do wear stuff like that, but it's not mandatory, and it's not all of us. I know a lot of witches who wear like sneakers and jeans all the time, even when they're doing like ceremonies or coven things like that. It really just depends on what your coven expects of your dress code. And remember, witchcraft is usually done in secret. So most of us, all the way back to the beginning of time, weren't really trying to advertise that we were a magic worker. Most people who are in craft want to go under the radar. So coming out with a long black dress and a pointy hat is not the way to go. Most people try to blend in with society, even though some of us do like to stand out. But like I said, it's not everybody. So if you have a family of witches, maybe 7 of them, at least 3 of them probably would have had on jeans and sneakers, at least sometimes. So the eccentric dress was the first thing I had to check off as definitely being a vice. Number 2, Uncle Macon used mind control on the main protagonist. He made him hallucinate. He made him see things and say things. Like he just like controlled his mind. And he didn't like do any kind of potion. He didn't do any kind of spell. He just sat there and was talking to him and was like just controlling him. It really doesn't work like that. You can do a spell, as you'll find out later. You can do a potion that will make somebody hallucinate, but the way that he did it, absolutely not. Human in love with a witch. A lot of times, you will see in movies and TV shows, like for instance, Bewitched, you'll see this concept of a human being with a witch. And it's this big conflict. But in reality, it's not a conflict. A lot of witches are in relationships with people who are not in paganism. It's not a deal breaker. Many of us date people from different spiritual systems. Now, I assume that it would probably be easier to date someone who was a pagan if you're a pagan. Like it would probably be easier to date somebody who's a Christian if you're a Christian, but you don't have to. I know a couple where the husband is Muslim and the wife is a Christian. They go to mosque and church together. It's really all up to your level of open-mindedness. So as long as my lover respected what I do and I respected what they do, it doesn't have to be a problem. So these conflicts that come out, this comedy conflicts that come out, or these big central, internal struggles that come out from a human being with a witch, it just doesn't really happen. Now, it can be a case of the witch being persecuted or the Christian being persecuted in the family because everybody else has one belief or another one. But you absolutely don't have this big conflict where you can't be in love with a mortal. That does not have to be a thing. Next one. Using magic to make people hallucinate. Uncle Macon does this, and later on the cousin does this. You cannot use magic to make someone hallucinate unless you make a potion and they ingest the potion. Then you can make them hallucinate. But you can't make them hallucinate what you want them to see. They're just going to hallucinate based on what's in their mind. In this movie, they were making him see snakes and vines, making him see himself. They were really screwing with his head. And you can't do this without a potion. And even then, it's not going to be exact. There's no way to make them see exactly what you want them to see. Using magic to write on the walls and ceiling. At one point, the young lady likes poetry. The main female character likes poetry, and the main male character, they both get into poetry. So at one point, she takes him to her room, and there's poems written in the ceiling and on the walls, but with magic. Not like she painted them or used a magic marker, but she did it with magic, and you can absolutely not do that. If you could do that, I would do that. That is really cool. You can paint it, you can write it, but you're not going to magically make them appear on the ceiling. That would be decent though, but it's not going to work. Using magic to make vines grow quickly. At one point in time, she's in her room and she makes the vines grow from the ground up to the window so that he can climb down the vines and escape her home before her uncle sees him. And I was like, witches do have a very intimate relationship with herbs. We use a lot of herbs. We use a lot of flowers. We use a lot of plants. We use a lot of that stuff in craft. But you can't make plants automatically grow in that manner. You can do different things. Like, for instance, I know witches who put crystals in their plants, sing to them, use music. One witch I know takes her hair and buries her hair in the plants, and she says it helps it grow faster. So I have seen them do stuff like that, but it's not going to be instantaneous. It's going to still take a natural course of time. It'll be faster than maybe somebody else's plants, but it's not going to be as fast as it was in the movie. Using magic to flip a police car. At one point, one of the evil characters makes a police car that's behind her, mind you, flip over. And you absolutely cannot do that. I can't think of not one way, even if you have telekinesis, you're not going to probably be able to move something so heavy. They've done studies and things like that with telekinesis, and a person might be able to move something a couple of inches, but it's usually not something as heavy as a car. She flipped his car over into a ditch. And I was like, this is more like a superhero, like the X-Men. This is more like telekinesis than it is witchcraft. Taking over someone's body and their mind. We talked about this before, but at one point in time, the one of the evil characters, she takes over the Ethan, the main male character's mind. And she's not letting him talk. He's trying to speak and can't. She won't let him talk. She makes him follow her around like a little puppy dog. So it's like really crazy because you're looking at him like, what is wrong with him? And again, you could not do that with witchcraft. You could, like I said, give somebody a potion and make them more docile or something like that. You also can control somebody's mind through spell work. Like, for instance, I have done spell work myself that is called justice work. So let's say that somebody's going to court and they come to me and say, hey, can you work on the court decision by working on the judge or working on the prosecution or working on the defense? And I can do something like that and suggest through witchcraft, through candle magic, through whatever means I choose to do the justice magic and suggest things into that person's mind. And they probably, in most cases, will do it. But it's not going to be instantaneous. It's going to be like something I do on the moon a month or two before. But I'm not just going to walk up to them and be like, woo, you will do what I tell you to do. You cannot speak now, It doesn't work like that. Not in the least bit. All right. Although witches are kind of persuasive, some people say they find us to be very persuasive, but still, it's not something that we make the person do. We just kind of suggest, and they go along or they don't, depending on what they want to do. Using a spell to keep a person from speaking. That's what she does to take over his mind. He can't even talk. And I was like, nah, that's not going to work. Using magic to spin the table. At one point in time, they're in the dining room eating dinner. And the two cousins stand up and they're facing each other off. And the dining room table starts spinning around and things is flying. And I was like, what is going on here? Definitely not going to happen. Definitely special effects. If you get angry, you'll see later on, emotions are very powerful. And any emotion, especially anger, can cause some things to happen. But I guarantee you the table's not going to spin around. Things are not going to come flying out of everywhere. This is just something that is not going to happen. That level of telekinesis is definitely for superheroes only. Using magic to spin the table, using magic to push someone out the window. Okay, so she's spinning the table and then pushes her cousin out the window. And I'm like, you're not going to lift something that heavy and throw it out the window with your telekinesis. It's not going to happen. Like I said, it would be something that would be spectacular if it could. If I could do that, that would be wonderful. I would love that. I might not want to push somebody out of a window, but I would be able to like move TVs around, move furniture around, stuff like that. And we can't do that. That's all special effects. A spell to reverse death. You cannot reverse death. I don't care what kind of magic you do. I don't care if you are a multi, top 30 level, magician. You're not going to reverse death. Death is something that is permanent. And in the movie, the mother or the ancestor, she's an ancestor. She comes up and her lover got shot, and she puts her hand on him and says some magic words, and he wakes up. And I was like, bull was dead. Ain't nothing happening. Now, she might have been able to do some mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. She might have been able to do, stop the bleeding. It's some medical things she could have did to bring him back to life. But that's not what she did. She laid her hands on him. She said some magic words, and he woke up. That's not going to happen. In the movie, it was one of the most forbidden spells. So I know that if pagans really could raise the dead, I'm sure a lot of us would not have had so many loss. My grandmother is gone. I would love to bring her back, but I know that there's no way, you can't do that. Also, in the movie, when you bring somebody back, you're cursed after that. So it messes up the balance of the, of the earth, of the dimension, of the space-time continuum or something, Death is permanent. There is no, reversal of death spell. Making it rain in one place. At one point in time, the main characters are fighting, and she makes it rain just on him. It's not raining anywhere else. Witches do magic. We do what we call weather magic. But you're not going to make it rain in one place on one person. Total Hollywood special effects. Next one. Spell books closing and on their own and writing disappearing. At one point in time, the main characters are at a magical library, and the books, when you open them, you can't read them unless the book thinks you're worthy. So when you look at it, you can't see any of the writing. The writing has to magically appear. And when you walk away from the book, it closes and locks on its own. Again, this is not going to happen. Even though we do have a lot of magical books, spell books, books of shadows, as you're going to hear about later, they don't operate like that. They're just regular books that somebody writes in, and generally people keep them guarded and pass them down in generations through families. Killing her mom with magic. The main character killed her mom. Her mom was really evil. She was like the most evil spellcaster of all time. And at the end of the movie, the main female character, Lena killed her. But the way she did it was like she just stared at her, and she made her veins pop up, and then all of a sudden, she was thrown into the wall, and and the vines started to choke her. And I was just watching like, you probably could mix up a potion and give somebody a heart attack. And it might not even be traceable, actually. If it was traceable, it would be manslaughter. It would be murder one. Now I think about it, because it's premeditated. But you probably could, give somebody a magical potion. You could probably, you don't even have to be a witch to do that. I'm sure there's all kind of people who've been poisoned, by their family members or lovers or things like that for whatever reason. So that could happen. But you're not going to, make her heart stop by staring at her or something like that. You might intimidate her till she's scared to death. Maybe, and even that's a stretch. That's a long stretch. Forgetting spell. At the end of the movie, Lena does a spell on Ethan so he will forget her. And I've actually had someone ask me about a spell like this before. There is a spell that will make a person forget you, but it's not instantaneous. You're not going to cast the spell and they forget you instantly. What happens is you cast the spell, and over time they lose interest in you. You put the suggestion into magic, and if your magic works, they will slowly but surely lose interest in you. But they're not going to forget that you exist. In the movie, he totally forgets that he even had a relationship with her. All he remembers is that she's some girl from school. That's not going to happen. The person may stop thinking about you, but they're not going to forget the time that you spent together or who you are fundamentally. So this movie had 16 vices. The craft that we did last week only had 10. So it was 16 things in this movie that was total bullshit. So know that up front. Now, I'm going to tell you the thing that bothered me the most about the movie before I tell you what I liked about the movie. What bothered me the most about this movie is there was no real fucking witchcraft. There was no witchcraft. I was like, where's the craft? Where's the candles? Where's the crystals? Where's the wand? Where's the athames? Where's the herbs? Where is the stuff? Where's the altars? I saw nothing. Nothing. One character says a spell, and we do often say spells. Sometimes they do rhyme. All my spells rhyme. I love rhyming spells. But some witches, especially modern ones, don't like rhyming spells or don't want to take the time or don't have that ability because that's kind of like writing poetry. So some of them don't really have the ability. So they'll just write them out. They'll state their intention and blah, 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 and they'll just write it out. So she did say a spell that sounded like something I would do on a full moon. But she didn't have, I mean, like, nothing. She wasn't at an altar. She didn't have nothing. Now, I'm not saying you need anything because a lot of witches don't use the same things. Many of us do use objects, tools, the things that I mentioned, but not all of us do. Honestly, those of us who are the more skilled tend to use most of these things, like a book of shadows, spell books, things along those lines. So, like I said before, everybody doesn't though. I know a few witches that are always like, well, I don't use this, I don't use that. And I often question, to be honest with you, how much witchcraft they're really doing. Because I'm like, if you don't have anything, what are you really doing? You might be using your psychic abilities or your mediumship or something like that, but that's a part of witchcraft. That's not the whole thing. You're not casting spells. You don't have any equipment. You don't even know the moon phases. So how much of a witch are you really? Because every witch I know who is good knows and does all these practices that have been passed down from our ancestors. So I really question that often. But I do know that everybody doesn't use them. But it irked me because you have this movie about spellcasters, about witches, and you don't see any witchcraft. In the craft, you saw a lot of witchcraft. You saw the candles, you saw them casting spells, you saw them doing rituals. And this, you only get to see one. You hear about others. You hear, oh, May can cast a spell, or oh, Lena cast a spell. You hear about it, but you don't get to see any of it. So for me, that's a big vice. So I'm adding another one. There are 17 vices in this movie. Now let's talk about what I liked. Because I did like some things about the movie, even though I find it to be mostly not real witchcraft. Number one, prophetic dreams. Both of the main characters are having prophetic dreams at the beginning of the movie. A lot of us do have prophetic dreams. One time I was in San Diego visiting a friend, and I was asleep. I was taking a nap. And I had a dream that he came to the door. He knocked on the door, and I said, "Who is it?" And he said, "Room service." So next thing, somebody's banging on the door. And I'm like, oh my God, who is it? And he was like, "Room service." So little things like that happen all the time. And then you might have big prophetic dreams, like of somebody going to pass over or things like that. When my grandparents died, I was 7. I had a dream about them dying the day before both of them died. They died within months of each other. And I had the exact same dream both times. I had a dream that I was standing on a cliff and I was with my grandmother. My grandfather died first, but in each case it was one of them. And it was me, it was them, and it was like Diane Carroll, who was a very special. I used to watch Dynasty. So she was on that show and she was there with us, and so was Joan Collins for some reason. Probably because I loved the show that much. And I had no business watching it because I was too little, but I kept sneaking to watch it. But I was standing on a cliff with them and either grandparent jumped off the cliff into the water that was below. We were diving off the cliff. We were swimming. And when they jumped, a shark ate them. And the next day, they both died. Months apart, same dream, and they both died. And I never had that dream again, thank God. And I never forgot it either because I was like, oh my God. So it kind of like it impressed upon me, you need to remember this because if you have this dream, it might mean somebody's going to pass over. So thank God I never had it again, but I did have it those two times and they both died. Mysterious loner witches, stereotypical but true. You always have these mysterious loner witches in these movies. Like people are scared of them, people don't want to talk to them. And this is stereotypical, but it is true. A lot of pagans have that kind of fear, and you're going to see more of that as I keep talking. But also, a lot of us are loners. A lot of us stay to ourselves. A lot of us are either introverted or introverted sometimes. So you do see the mysterious loner witch stereotype, but it's very true. You see it a lot. Nature responding to magical energy. Nature does respond when you do magic. I've been in the woods doing rituals more than once, and the wind picked up. Strange birds or animals came around. The most unusual thing, one of the most unusual things that happened to me is when I moved to Costa Rica, I was in my yard doing a ritual. And after I finished it, and I had to do, the ritual was real easy. You had to plant a flower and all this other stuff. So I was finishing the ritual, and I turned around, and all of these butterflies started flying around me. It must have been like 50 or 60 of them. And they all started flying around me and landing on me and landing in my hands and on my shoulders. And I was just like amazed. I get goosebumps even thinking about it. And because moving out of the country was a big transformation for me. And I felt like Goddess was like, yeah, she was answering me like, yeah, you got it. It's cool. You got this. And that was one of the most amazing things that ever happened to me. But yeah, stuff like that happens. The wind picks up. It might start raining out of nowhere. The sun might come out of nowhere. Different things happen. Nature does respond. There is something called weather magic. And some priests and priestesses, witches, wizards do weather magic. I've never sat and done specific weather magic, but it does happen. People do it when a bad hurricane is coming. They'll try to push it away from their town or out towards the water or whatever it is to keep it from hurting people. Things like that do occur very frequently. People in town afraid of the witches. People are often afraid of you if you tell them you're a pagan because they automatically assume that you do curses and hexes. And not all of us do curses and hexes. Curses and hexes are against my vows. So not all of us hurt people. But people do expect that. If you say, hi, I'm a pagan, or hi, I'm a witch, hi, I'm a priestess, they automatically expect that you are dangerous, that you could hurt them, you could do something to them. And it's most of the time, I mean, it's possible. I mean, shit, anybody can hurt you if they want to, but it's very insulting to me because I don't hex people. Now, I used to live in Philadelphia, and one day my neighbor told my mother she was scared of me. And because she saw me doing some witchy shit, that I was trying to do on the low ski, but she was newsy and always watching out the window and shit, trying to see what people are doing. And she saw me doing something witchy outside. And she tells my mother that she's afraid of me. And I was just like, I just thought it was stupid because it was like, you've known me all this time. I've never done anything to you, and I've had reason to. You've pissed me off quite a few times. I'd rather punch you in your face than cast a spell on you. And I just thought it was insulting. I thought it was rude, and I thought it was stereotypical. I thought it was prejudiced, all those kind of things. I didn't say anything about it, though, because I felt like it really wasn't going to do anything. But I just thought it was off. It was like, just like, you can't be serious. How can you be afraid of somebody for 20 years that you live next door to that's done nothing to you? Magical energy breaking windows in the classroom. there was like a wall of windows. It must have been like 10 or 15 windows. And the girl gets angry and the windows explode, you know? And I've never seen somebody explode that many windows, but I have had situations like that. And I'll tell you, one day when I first started getting into craft, I got angry about something. I came into the room and the light bulb over me burst. I mean, no reason. The lights were on. I had been chilling. Got into an argument or something stupid happened. I came back into the room and the light bulb burst. Another time, I walked into a bar. I had just had an argument with somebody, and I sat down on the stool, and I was looking at the liquor to see what I wanted, and the glass that was hanging over top of me, because in a bar they hang the glasses in the ceiling sometimes, and the one that was hanging right over me exploded. And everybody, I mean, the bar wasn't full. It was like five people in there and a bartender and another bartender. Everybody turned and looked at me. And I was like, oh, that's unusual. I just played it off. But everybody knew something about that was strange, but I played it off like I had no clue. Then the other time I was at work. I used to waitress at IHOP. And I came to work, got mad about something. IHOP gave us plenty of reasons to be mad. They treated us horrible. That was an awful job. But I needed the money, so I held on to it. And at one point in time, I was standing there and I reached and got a glass. And the glass exploded in my hand. So those kind of things could happen. I've just never seen it on such a large scale. That many windows, and with such force. The glass was flying and cutting people. I was like, wow. All right, next one. Let's see. All right, so we're done that one. Let's go to the next page. Finding an important magical item by accident. Yeah, at one point, the main character finds a artifact, like a pendant kind of thing. It's a locket. He found it in the graveyard just by accident. But what I thought was very accurate, because that part is kind of a stretch, but what was accurate was when they touched it, they could get images of the people it belonged to. And a lot of people who are empaths and readers and things like that can do that. I can take somebody's item and I can hold it and I can get impressions and energy of that person off of their item and then use it with my tarot cards to read the person. The person doesn't have to be alive. The person doesn't have to be in the room, in the country even, and I can read them that way. So many of us have that ability. Some people can see actual visions from touching it, visions of the person that it belonged to. Not being able to control your powers. When you first get into craft, many people can't control their powers. Like most of us can't. Like your empathic abilities, any of those kind of things, mediumship. Most people can't control that. They have to learn to control it. They have to learn how to channel it and how to use it. So that is very true as well. They also had seers. A seer is a clairvoyant. So in the movie, there was one clairvoyant, Viola Davis. I love her. She did a great job. And there are clairvoyant people. I'm one of those people that has visions, prophetic dreams, things like that. That's a seer. She used it to talk to her ancestors. That was the next one I liked a lot. Talking to ancestors for assistance. Most of us do talk to our ancestors. Most of us have an ancestral altar or ancestors on our altar or something like that. And another thing she did that a lot of us do is we give offerings. A lot of us give an offering to our ancestors, an offering to God or Goddess, an offering to the angels. And basically when we give these offerings, if it's a human person, you give them something that they liked in life. food they liked, jewelry, perfume, things like that. If it's a spirit, you might know something about that spirit. And you might give them something like that or something that they ask for. Oils, flowers, things like that. So offerings were in the movie, and offerings are very, very, very utilized in craft. Turning 16, the rite of passage. In many magical traditions, you are initiated between 12 and 18 years old. So it depends on your culture, it depends on your tradition, it depends on your family. But between 12 and 16, sometimes it's 12 because of puberty, and sometimes it's 16 or 18. So somewhere between there, people usually sometimes 13, 15, different times between there. And the idea is to initiate you into craft. In modern times, most of the time, it's your decision if you want to be initiated or not. In the old days, families just did that, and it's like I don't think they always gave them an option or not. But in modern times, you usually have an option. So you usually wait until a young person is between 12 and 18 before initiating them into the ways. Usually before 12, they do learn little things like with herbs, with oils, things like that. But you usually wait until they're mature before you start teaching them things that could hurt them or another person. The struggle between dark and light. Ah, there's such a struggle between dark and light. When you look at paganism, you have white witches, you have dark witches, and you have gray witches. Gray witches are just like Lena in the movie and her uncle Macon, meaning they can be dark, they can be light, they can do good, they can do bad, depending on their mood, basically, or what the situation calls for. Dark witches generally just do stuff that's negative. They could do good things if they want to, but it's usually just not in their nature. And light witches are usually healers, readers, seers, things like that. They could do dark or negative, but they usually just it's not in their nature to do negative. It's the exact opposite of the dark witch. And there is a struggle between these two because if you even go into a basic pagan Facebook group, you'll see people arguing about to hex or not to hex, to curse or not to curse, karma or no karma, the rule of three, meaning that if you do something to someone, it comes back to you threefold. You do see those arguments, and you see people saying, "Oh, you can do whatever you want. Nothing's going to come back to you. You have to hex if you heal. You can't just do one or the other." You have that camp, which I totally think is bullshit. Then you have the other camp that's like, well, okay, but that's not what I want to do, So it depends on which, like, where you are with it because some people think it's absolutely okay to harm people if they do something to you or something like that. So it depends. Some people are paid to hurt people, and they think that's okay. And I just never have. Probably because of my vows. If I hadn't have initiated as a priestess of my yacht, I wouldn't have that particular promise. Wicca witches too make a promise not to hurt people if they believe in the rule of three. So it really depends on what culture and what you initiated into. Witchcraft in families. Witchcraft absolutely does run in families because a lot of times your spiritual gifts are you're born with them. You're born with mediumship. You're born with clairvoyance. You're born with these things. And a lot of times you got it down your family line. There are a lot of people in my family who are into spirit and spirituality in different ways. None of them as strongly as I am, but like the other day, my cousin was reading tarot cards, and I was like, "Where the hell did she get tarot cards?" So it is like that. My mother has prophetic dreams. One of my great grandmothers actually did witchcraft. So I think she did hoodoo, if I'm not mistaken. So like, there's different traditions, and usually it does run in families. But out of all of the family members, I'm probably the one who is the most vocal, the most knowledgeable. But it doesn't, every generation, usually there's somebody who's into it, or even it's a little bit. The solstice. Around December 21st in the northern hemisphere is the winter solstice. In the movie, that was Lena's birthday. And the winter solstice is a very powerful time for pagans. Pagans usually celebrate the wheel of the year. So the solstice is one of the holidays on the wheel. Another one is Yule time, Halloween. These are really important times because we do a lot of rituals and a lot of craft during this time. Basically, it has to do with the heavens and the planets and the stars and how things are lined up. We cast magic based on the moon, the stars, and the heavens. So the solstice is one of the most powerful times when we usually do spells for prosperity, for continued health, and things along those lines. So the solstice is a very important time, and it came up in the movie. Prayers and spells. Somebody once said to me a long time ago that a spell is nothing more than a prayer. And they are basically the same thing. The only difference is that with a prayer, you just say the prayer and you move on. With a spell, you say the magic words or the prayer words, but you also might light a candle. And sometimes Catholics do that too, light a candle with their prayers. We light a candle with our spells. So they're very, very similar. I think the spells are just more intricate because we use candles and herbs and oils and things like that. So it's just a little bit more intricate, but either way, it's very, very similar. It's basically, you know, asking whatever spirit you're working with, your God, your goddess, the Lord, the lady, whatever you're working with, you're asking that spirit to help you manifest this energy or do whatever it is you're trying to do. The magic of love. Oh my God. This movie has so much love in it. Even the main character, the guy Ethan, who had no magic at all, had the power of love. He was able to protect her at times when she needed it with his power of love. And he was able to break the spell that she put on him at the end with the power of love. So the power of love comes up very strongly. And the power of love and emotions are very strong in paganism because love is to me, love is the most intoxicating spell in the world. And when it comes to emotions, which love is one of them, when you get ready to do a spell, you well up emotion. You stand in front of your altar or you stand wherever you are and you get that emotion up. And let's say you're going to do a love spell. I would get into the vibration of love, listening to love music, feeling love. I would get into the emotion, the feeling of love, you know, before I do the spell. So emotions play very heavily in paganism. You have to get your emotions up, your energy up to do the work. You don't just stand there and light the candle, you know, say the magic words, tap your wand. You have to get that emotion up and that focus up and that concentration up. And it has a lot to do with emotion. Dark energy changing people for the worse. I have always said that people that do dark magic change for the worse because over the years I've known people who do gray and dark magic, or I've known people because I didn't stay in contact with them. And it changed them for the worse. It seemed like the more they got into it, the more negative they became. And the gray ones would just be go back and forth. Sometimes they was okay and sometimes they weren't. This one girl I knew, it threw her off to the point where she was just so wishy-washy. Like she had the hardest time like even focusing. So gray and dark magic I have seen turn change a person who was okay for the worse. Main characters are reincarnations of their ancestors. I thought that was really cool because the main character's ancestors were in love, and the man got killed, and the female went dark when he got killed. And it almost happened again in this movie because he was about to be killed and she was going dark until her uncle stopped her. So I thought that was really cool. And I've seen this theme a lot in movies, this reincarnation theme. And I believe very strongly in reincarnation. So I thought that was really cool. Putting up magical protections. We do put up magical protections in different ways. Some of the times it's a spell, some of the times it's something else. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. When I worked in a high school, I had magical protections up because the students is out of pocket. You know, they could get really wild. Fights break out, all kind of stuff happens. So I had black obsidian. I bought a box of it. And I took the black obsidian and put it in the corners in the ceiling. The ceiling had a drop ceiling. I pushed the ceiling up and put pieces of obsidian all around the room. Every classroom that I had to work in. And one of the sergeants said to me, one of the school police officers said to me, I find it weird that you never have fights in your classroom. And I was like, I guess I'm just lucky. You know? And everybody knew I was a witch because even though I didn't talk about it, you can kind of tell, you know? So that's probably what he was probably fishing. But yeah, I mean, I did all kinds of witchy stuff all the time. I mean, all the time. And when you're a witch, you always do witchy stuff. It's how you handle things, you know? It's that's your forte. When something goes wrong, you know, that's what you do. I used to read cards in class, you know, when the students were, taking tests or during breaks or whatever, I would sit and study my cards, so everybody kind of knew, but they didn't know exactly what I did. As I've always been one of those mysterious kind that I do what I do, but I don't always say exactly what it is that I do. I'm more vocal about it now as I've gotten older because I don't care no more, but back then I really didn't want people to know because of the stigma, the stereotypes that go along with people knowing what you do. Now I just don't care. But back then I was more secretive about it. But I did have that black obsidian all around the room. And I had other protective things around my home and places like that. Now, spell books, books of shadows. This is something else that is very, very true. There are books of shadows. What is a book of shadows, you may ask? A book of shadows is simply a spell book. And when you are a young witch, you write your own spell book. You put all the spells in it that you find and want to try. And if your ancestor or your mom or somebody like that used to do craft or does craft or whatever the case is, they may pass down these books of shadows. So some people have a book of shadows that came from another family member. Now, the other thing I saw in here that I liked a lot was runes. So the other part was runes. In this movie, we see runes. What is a rune? A rune is a divination tool. It is a tool that some witches use to tell your future or tell your present or whatever the case is. Runes come from the European tradition. I'm not sure which culture, but it's one of the European cultures. And basically, runes are carvings, and they come on crystals, or some people may carve them into clay or something like that. And they take them and they put their hand into a bag and like kind of wish them around and then throw them out. And then they tell you based on how they fall what's going on with you. Somebody bought me a bag of runes, so I do have a bag. And when I started to study them, I realized that they were interesting, but what I was using was more extensive. I was using tarot, and it to me gave more information. So I didn't study runes long because it wasn't enough information for me. But some people do use them very effectively and they swear by them. But for me, tarot was a better divination tool. I think everybody has to pick their own divination tool. Triple goddess symbol. When she got that book, one of the spell books that she got, it had the triple goddess symbol on it. And the triple goddess symbol I have tattooed right here. It's hard to see it, but it's a crescent moon, a full moon, and another crescent moon. And it has, these are just like decorative on the side, but it's basically just the moons. That's the actual symbol. And what does that mean? You probably have seen it before. It means the maiden, the mother, and the crone. It is a symbol of the goddess. So when you see that symbol, that person is probably a pagan or somebody who's into the goddess. And the maiden is when you're young, the mother is when you're, mother aged, and the crone is when you've gotten older. It is the three life stages of a woman, first of all, and the stages of the goddess. So a lot of us have this on jewelry or tattoos or something like that. Those of us who work with goddess energy. Breaking spells. You can break a spell. Depending upon what the spell was, you can break it. Let's say you cast a spell. I'll give you an example. A long time ago, this man put a love spell on me. And he put the love spell on me because he wanted to use me basically because he was a magic worker. And when you have one or more magic workers together, that's the strongest energy. When you have two of you, three of you, four of you, five of you, that's the strongest energy. So if you want to do some magic or something like that and you have another person, it makes your magic that much stronger. So I think he was trying to just use me for, my magic. And I really wasn't feeling him. I was just playing with him. Because I'm one of them kind of people that'll play with you. Not anymore, but back then, before I knew better. This is what taught me better, actually. And I was playing with him. And he, I guess, decided that he was going to, play with me and get me to do what he wanted me to do. And he put a love spell on me. And I knew he put the spell on me as soon as he did the spell because I felt weird. I didn't like him that much in the first place. And I was liking him a little bit too much. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? Because I wasn't even dating men at that time. By that time, that whole phase in my life was over. So I knew something was strange that I liked him so much. And it kept feeling more intense. So I knew what he had done. And so I reversed the spell. And then he did some other things, and I had to fight with him for 2 years back and forth because he kept trying to get control back over me, kept doing other spells, kept trying to get me back. And I just, for 2 years, fought him off. Basically doing defensive magic and like putting up protections, and he would break one that I had to put something else up and had to take off a love spell that he put on another one. We fought back and forth because he was pretty strong. He and I were probably comparable in strength, and we fought back and forth for 2 years. And at the end of the 2 years, I went to an elder and I told the elder what had been going on. And the elder was like, you got him on the ropes. Just keep fighting. He looked at my cards and he did a reading and he was like, you got him on the ropes. Just keep fighting him. And he was right. Because after a couple more weeks, he was gone. But it took 2 years to finally break his grip and get him to leave me alone. So spells can be broken, but it's not always the easiest thing to do. So it has 24 virtues. So this movie has 24 virtues and it has 16 vices. So what is my final word on this movie? Well, I thought the movie was okay. It wasn't the best. It was just okay. I will give it a C. I'll give it a C because it had a lot of things that I liked, but it has 16 things that were completely impossible, and you never got to see any real witchcraft. So to me, that's really the biggest vice because it's like if you're going to do a movie about witchcraft, you should see some witchcraft. So that was pretty much it. So I don't know if you got a chance to see this movie or not. I don't know if you want to see this movie or not. I gave it a C. It's not something that I would honestly say, yes, you must see this movie. I've seen some movies that you must see. This was not one of them. It was one of those kind of movies that was just okay. I really liked certain characters. I loved her cousin. Her cousin was evil, but she was really funny. I really loved her behavior. Her uncle was gray. I really liked him too because even though he had this kind of rough exterior, you could tell he really loved Lena and he really loved his family. So I liked certain things about it. I also liked the love story aspect of it. But like I said, it's not really a must see movie, and it's not the best portrayal. It's not the most accurate portrayal because, again, there's no real witchcraft in it. So I would love to have seen that change made. So maybe one day they'll remake it and they'll put some real witchcraft into it. Who knows? All right, guys. So thank you, patrons. Thank you for watching my video. And please come back next week because I'm going to do another video for you. But I'm going to do that video with my new equipment. So the picture will be a lot sharper. And I think you guys will really like it. All right. I'll see you then. Thank you for being a patron. Thank you for supporting me, supporting my channel, and checking out the witch trials. Please come back soon because I have a lot more to say about witchcraft. See you later.